Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the class. In the previous class, we have discussed about the megaliths. Megaliths are, we can say them, the guards. In your book, it is written silent sentinels. Sentinels means guard. So they were there to guard the burial. Okay, so we call them silent sentinels. Why silent? Because they were not able to say anything. They were made of stone, boulders. Okay, so they were silent sentinels, and in this regard, we have studied that these megaliths were erected around 3000 years ago, and the place where it was erected was throughout the Deccan, that is South India, and then in the northeast and Kashmir. And we have seen that there are many types of megaliths. For example, many times we see that uh, the megaliths were on the surface, and many times it is underground also. And sometimes the archaeologists find that a circle of stone boulders was there, or sometimes a single large stone was standing on the ground. So all these were different types of megaliths, and then we have discussed about cyst, in which there is a circle of stone, and there is also a porthole. And we have seen that in all these burials, there are some common things which were buried with the dead person, like pots which were black and red were, and then tools and weapons of iron, and sometimes the skeleton of horses were also found, horse equipment, and ornaments of stone and gold were also found. Then we have also seen that the burial, by the excavation of burial site, we come to know about the social differences which was existing at that time, because at one of the places, one of the locations where megaliths were erected, that is Brahmagiri, the archaeologists have found one skeleton that was buried with 33 gold beads, two stone beads, four copper bangle, and one conch shell. And other skeletons have only a few pots. So why this difference was there? Because there was difference in their social status. So it was existing at that time, and we come to know about this by the burials only. And there is another thing about the burials, that many times the archaeologists have found that these megaliths contain more than one skeleton, and these more than one skeleton belonging to the same family, and these people were buried in the same place, but they were not died at the same time. So, how the bodies of those who died later were brought into the grave? They were brought into the grave through the portholes. I told you portholes. It's a like an opening, and that was used to bring the uh, dead body of those persons who died later. And then we see that a stone circle or boulders placed on the surface so that people could identify the place, identify the burial site, and they will return to the same place whenever they want it. And then we have seen a special burial at Inamgaon. Inamgaon, which was occupied between 3600 to 2700 years ago, and it was presently lying in Maharashtra. It is presently lying in Maharashtra. This site was on the river God, which is a tributary of Bhima. Okay, and then what we know about the burial in this village, that generally uh, adults were buried in the ground, and they were laid in the straight position and with their head facing the north direction. And but sometimes the burial was done inside the house also, and vessels and pots were put with the dead person in the burial site, and these vessels and pots contained food and water. But there is a special burial site has been excavated by the archaeologist, and this special burial is done inside the house, and the house is five roomed house, which is one of the largest houses at the site, and the burial is done in a four-legged clay jar in the courtyard of the house, in the center of the house. Okay, and this house has also a granary, and the body was placed in a cross legs position, and this all these facts indicate that this burial was special, and most probably the burial was done of the chief. And then we have studied about the skeleton, what we know about the how we know about the gender of the people who were buried through their many times people can say that the things which have been buried with the dead person, by the nature of those things we can know the um, gender of the dead person, but that is not a correct explanation, because like ornaments, nowadays mostly women wear ornaments, but in ancient time male, today's also male members also wear the ornament, so that is not a right criteria. So the other criteria is to study the bone of the uh, person. By studying the bone, by observing the bone, we can understand that the buried person was a male or a female. And then we have no we have studied about Charaka, who was a physician and who wrote a book on medicine. The name of the book was Charak Sanhita, and in this book he stated that the human body has 360 bones. So actually, this is much more than the human body has bones. Actually, we have 206 bones, but Charak has counted. mm Other than bones, he has also counted the teeth, joints, and cartilage. So his number of bones exceeded, and he counted it to 360. Now, today we will read about this occupation at Inamgaon. What was the occupation of the people at Inamgaon? So, archaeologists have found seeds of wheat, barley, rice, pulses, millets, peas, and sesame. So, in Inamgaon, we have found seeds of all these grains. So, what does it denote? It denotes that people used to do farming. Farming of grains was done in Enamgaon. Then bones of a number of animals, many bearing cut marks that show that they have been used as food, have also been found. So the first thing what we know about the people of Inamgaon is uh, by finding the seeds of wheat, barley, rice, pulses, millets, peas, and sesame that people used to be involved in farming activity. Then bones of a number of animals have also been found, and what archaeologists have found that bones of the animals, some of the many of the bones of the animals are having cut marks. So this cut mark shows that they have been used as food, because they have been hunted by the people. People used to hunt them, and the purpose of hunting was to eat them, because on their bones many times cut marks have been found. Then the animals, the bones of animals which have been found is cattle, buffalo, goat, sheep, dog, horse, ass, pig, sambar, spotted deer, black buck, antelope, hare, and mongoose. So all these animals were there at that time. And other than these animals, there were also bones of birds have been found, crocodile, turtle, crab, and fish. There is evidence that fruits such as bale, amla, jamun, dates, and a variety of berries were collected. So people used to collect food also, collect different type of fruits. Okay, so what you find, what was the occupation of the people? Occupation of the people was that they did farming. Besides farming, they were also hunters and they were also gatherers. Okay, so all these things were done by the people at the same time. Now we will read about elsewhere. We have seen what was happening in uh, the Indian subcontinent around 3500 years ago. Now we will see what was happening in China around 3500 years ago. We find some of the first evidence of writing in China. Around 3500 years ago, we find evidence of writing. And where this writing was done in China, these writings were done on the bones of animal bones, on the bones of animal. And what was the purpose of writing on animal's bone? The purpose of writing on the animal bones was to know about the future. Mostly kings, they were very worried about so many questions regarding future, like would they win battle or not, would the harvest be good or not, would they have sons or not. So all these questions were written on the bones. And then what happened, that these bones then put into fire. When the bones were put into fire, then they will crack because of the heat. It is natural. And then when the bones will crack, then what happened? The fortune teller will study these cracks. And according to the pattern of the crack, according to the observation of the crack, the fortune teller will predict the future. So these bones were called oracle bones because these bones were used to know the future. The fortune teller used to predict the future with the help of these bones. Okay, and we can understand this type of prediction was not always true because it was not it has nothing to do with reality. It was just guesswork was done, and the kings became very happy by knowing the positive result. And in this way we see that around 3500 years ago, in China, people used to write on the bones of animals for the purpose of knowing the future. And these kings, where do these kings lived? These kings lived in palaces in cities. Okay, and we have seen that during this time in the Indian subcontinent, the kings did not live in palaces. Okay, and they were also not having regular army or capital city. But in China, we see that the kings used to live in palace in cities. They have vast quantity of wealth. They have accumulated, they have amassed vast quantity of wealth. And what does this wealth contained? It included large, elaborately decorated bronze vessels. At that time in China, people were not knowing the use of iron. But in India at that time, people started using iron. So this is all about this the chapter, and now we will discuss the question answer. You can see the first question is match the columns. Sukta means well said, so it will be matched with well said. Then chariots are used in battle, so it will be matched with used in battles. Then yagya were sacrifice, and dasa were slaves, and megalith were stone boulders. So in this way we see the this. Now we will do the filling the blanks. Okay, and in this we will see the first question is slaves were used for what? Slaves were used for work. Okay, then in B we will see megaliths are found in. You have to write the places where megaliths are found in the subcontinent. These places are the Deccan, South India, Northeast, and Kashmir. Okay. Then in C it is written stone circles or boulders on the surface were used to indicate the exact place of burial. Why stone circles or boulders were used on the surface? They were used for indicating the exact place of burial. Okay. Then in D it is written portholes were used for. You have to write why portholes were used. In this you can write portholes were used for burying the other members of the same family at the same place. Okay, and then E, people at Inamgaon ate. What people at Inamgaon ate? They ate different grains like wheat, barley, rice, pulses, millets, peas, sesame, etc. So this is your filling the blanks. Now we will discuss some question answer. The third question is, in what ways are the books we read today different from the Rig Veda? So what is the difference between the book we read today and the book which was composed in the ancient time, that is Rig Veda? So what is the difference? The first difference is that today the books are written. The books are written on the paper and they are in the printed form. And what we found about the Rig Veda, that the Rig Veda was written by the hand on the palm leaves and they were not printed. These books, the Rig Veda was composed 3,500 years ago, but its printed form we got only about 200 years ago. So at that time it was only memorized by the students, and later it was passed on the new generation by speaking, listening. So that was the way of reading the book. And then another difference was there. The Rig Veda was written in Vedic Sanskrit, and this Vedic Sanskrit is different from the form of Sanskrit which we use today. So the difference in the form, it was written on the palm leaves, and nowadays books are written on the paper. Then at that time it was written by hand. Nowadays books are written not written by hand, but they are in the printed form. Then there is difference of language. These are the main difference between the books we read today and the Rig Veda. Now the fourth question is, what kind of evidence from burials do archaeologists use to find out whether there were social differences amongst those who were buried? So the archaeologists use what evidences the archaeologists use? The archaeologists found many objects, and according to these objects, they came to know about the social differences, because some skeletons were buried with a great number of pots. Then golden beads were also buried with the dead body, but some skeletons were found in some burial site. The skeletons were found with only few pots. So the archaeologists have concluded that people were buried with objects depending upon their status. If people belong to higher status, then they were buried with so many objects, valuable metals. Objects made of valuable metals were used to be buried with the person if he was of high status. And if the person was not belonging to any high status, then he was buried with few objects. So this is the this kind of evidences were used by the archaeologists. Now the fifth question is, in what ways do you think that the life of a Raja was different from that of a Das or Dasi? We have seen that Raja was one who ruled the regions, who ruled the places, and they were the king of the community, whereas Das and Dasas were they were not considered as people, but they were considered as property of the owners. They were slaves. They were used for work only, and they were captured in the war. But if we see, the Raja was having a very prestigious position in the society. He usually in the leadership of Raja, the battles were fought, and the wealth, whatever wealth was acquired by battle, a part of that wealth was kept by the Raja. So these are the differences between the Raja and the Das or Dasi. Now we will see some important dates. In this you can see, this is very important. When was the composition of Vedas started? About how many years ago? It was about 3,500 years ago when the composition of Vedas started. Then building of megalith started about 3,000 years ago. And we found settlement at Inamgaon between 3,600 and 2,700 years ago. Then Charka was a physician. He was there around 2,000 years ago. So these are important dates which you must remember, so that you can answer the question whenever such questions are asked. In question number 8, you have to fill the columns. It is written in the one column, name is written, in the second, work, third, language, and in the fourth column, anything else can be written. So how you have to do? In the Rig Veda, we have learned that people were described in terms of the work they did and the languages they speak. And in the table which is given below, in this you have to fill in the names of 6 people you know. Okay, in this you have to write the name of 6 people. First, second, third, fourth, ऐसे करके you have to write the name of 6 people you know. Then you have to write the work they do. Okay, इसमें से in these 6 में 3 should be men and 3 should be women. Okay, and then you have to write the work they do. Okay, then after writing the work they do, you have to write the language they speak, and then anything else if you want to write about them, you can write in this column. So this you have to do in your notebook. Okay, and thus we have completed the chapter, and now we have a new chapter, that is kingdoms, kings, and an early republic. And again, I will remind you that this is your chapter 6 in the old book. According to the new book, according to the new syllabus, this is your chapter 5. Okay, and in this chapter we will know about very new things, like in the previous chapter which we have just completed, we have discussed about a group of people which were called Jana, isn't it? Do you remember? A group of people were called Jana, and this was also a name given to the group of people. And in this Jana, what happened? People used to choose their king. Who will be their king? The king was chosen by the people. But with the passage of time, what happened that all the system started to change, and we find that the Raja, the king, started to do sacrifices, like horse sacrifices, that was called Aswamegha Yagya, was one such ritual. So the kings started to do so many sacrifices, and slowly what we find that the Jana became very big, and now this Jana came to be known as Janpada, and some Janpads were very large in area. So these Janpadas were started to be called Mahajanpada. So in how this the king of the Janpada was powerful, what were his powers, and how he used to accumulate wealth, what were the system of taxes, all these important topics will be discussed in this chapter. Okay, and you will know about very new thing, like I'm telling you, Varnas. You will know about Varnas also, because what we see that at that time society was not based on the principle of equality. The society was based on the principle of inequality, because at that time the society was divided into 4 Varnas. And this Varna system was hierarchical. What is the meaning of hierarchical? Hierarchical means that all these Varnas were not of equal importance. Some Varnas were more important than the other. Like at this Varna system, the Brahmanas were given the top position, and after Brahmanas there were Kshatriyas, and after Kshatriyas there were Vaishyas, and after Vaishyas there were Shudras. So in this structure we see that the condition of Shudras was the most poor condition. They were in the very exploitative condition, and not only Shudras but women were also having equal status, because both the Shudras and the Varnas were not allowed to read the Vedas. And this Varna system was based on the birth. It means that the person who is a Brahmin, whoever will take birth in that Brahmin family will be a Brahmin only. So this was not based on merit. Merit has nothing to do with it. It was only based on the birth system. Okay. And in this figure, in this map of India, you can see the important Mahajanpadas. These are the Mahajanpadas. Magad, Vaisali, Vajji, Ang, Kosal, Panchal, okay, Taksila, Avanti, all these are important Mahajanpadas. And then we will see the system of taxes started during this period. People used to give tribute and taxes to the king, and then the system of agriculture was also changed. And what change was started, that people started to use wooden plowshare, and then people started to transplant paddy. All these things will be taught to you in detail. Today I am just giving you an overview of the chapter. And in this chapter you will read about Magadha, which is presently Bihar, which is currently known as Bihar. So how Magadha became so powerful? What were the favorable conditions which make Magadha powerful, the most powerful temple? And then we will know about Vajji also. And in this way, this is your chapter. So we will discuss all these in the next class.